CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
Hi, I'm a fucking nobody, and you're listening to Tim Graham and Friends.
Who's in the NFL here? You? You? How about you, Tim? You, Tim.
It's a special edition of Tim Graham and Friends brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic here with Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. Jonah back in his friendly confines in North Buffalo / Kenmore. Me in my undisclosed bunker still. Jonah, it was a nice touch to have you out at the stadium last week for the Section 6 championships. Maybe
I have thought about making that like a Zoom background and superimposing in here, and it can just look like I'm standing there in that seat all day long.
Well, yeah,
every podcast.
You would always be on location. People would wonder what is going on at the stadium at the various hours that we record. We have to do it on a Tuesday because it is a weird week. The Bills play on Thursday night, and I will be traveling to Houston on Wednesday. What is the point of doing a podcast on Thursday? Or maybe we do one on Friday when I'm after I get back. We can recap what happened with the Bills in Houston. But so much going on. Let me just give a quick rundown, and we'll get to all of these things. Tonight, college basketball, 4-0 Vermont against 4-0 UB at Alumni Arena. That's tonight. Also, a really big game in Division II, Damon, number 4 in the country, hosting Fairmont State, number 5 in the country. Huge showdown at Lumsden Gymnasium there on the campus of Damon. So go check that out if you want. The Sabres hosting the Calgary Flames tonight at 7:30. So a smorgasbord of Buffalo sports going on. And then tomorrow, Maction schedule makers not doing UB any favors. They host Miami of Ohio at UB Stadium at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. And then an hour and 15 minutes later, the Bills will kick off against the Houston Texans on Thursday Night Football. So we're going to obviously get to the Bills and everything that's going on with them and the Keon Coleman fiasco and Josh Allen's 6 touchdowns. But real quick, Jonah, college basketball. I know that you have a conflict. You have, you would normally be at these events individually, but now you have 3 events going on tonight. How are you going to handle UB Vermont, Fairmont State Damon, and Flames at Sabres?
Well, Sabres play tomorrow night. But that's a conflict with UB football, and I'm going to have to kind of make a decision on what event I think is more newsworthy.
Yeah,
there.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, I think it's the same answer.
Wednesday night.
The Sabres winning these last 2 games have made that decision a little bit tougher. If the Sabres were rolling along with more losses.
Well, wait a minute. Wait. Does UB football play Thursday night?
UB football plays Wednesday night this week.
Shit, I blew it all then.
Game. UB basketball. Tonight's the 2 basketball games, and they tip off an hour apart. There's maybe a way to catch some of the Damon and get over to UB. Keep an eye on UB while I'm at
Why'd
Damon.
You let me keep talking if I was getting them all wrong?
I don't like to interrupt. But now I'm here to correct you, and we have a nice back and forth over the schedule. But it's the same point. It's a lot going on and a lot of merit in attending a lot of these games, especially with trying to keep track of 4 and 8 and 10, really, with kind of the Division II teams. Damon women are off to another good start. Trying to see them all and keep track of their seasons when they're all playing and the Sabres are playing and UB football's playing and the Bills are playing is a scheduling challenge. And just even if it schedules out right, it takes a while to catch up and see all these teams and figure out how they're playing and then navigate the rest of the season. But getting into January, February, and March when college basketball means a bit more and the stakes raise a little bit higher, there's less of these conflicts. I am interested in UB. They're playing well and they have better players and they're certainly a better team than they've been the last couple of years. But how much better, how good of a season they're going to have, I think is still something to be determined. And Vermont is a quality opponent to see how well they play against them.
Vermont
And
is a fine program. They don't have any big wins. They're 4-0, so I took a look at their schedule. They did need double overtime to beat Brown. They played Plattsburgh. I don't remember. I mean, it was kind of, it wasn't impressive. So you wouldn't look at Vermont's schedule and say, oh, they've already proven themselves against Team X,
well,
whereas
certainly no.
UB has the big win against DePaul.
Yeah, and I think one of these Vermont wins is against SUNY Plattsburgh, although one of UB's wins is against RIT. But Vermont won 21 games last year. They beat UB by 11 points and have been a consistently good America East NCAA tournament qualifying team uh, several years over the past number of years. So this is a good game for UB really in any schedule, I think. And having Vermont on the schedule and a home is a good situation. And then this would be a solid win for UB. It's not the type of win that's going to make their NCAA tournament resume or get them top 25 votes. They're 4-0 for the second time in their Division One history. And the other time they were 4-0, it was part of an 11-0 start when they were ranked in the top 25. So they're not that good, I don't think, but they're better than they've been. And I think maybe worth going out on a Tuesday night when there's not a hockey game, when there's not a Bills game, and seeing some live action. They're playing well enough to, I think, inspire some local sports fans to go check them out. They have a home game against Canisius coming up. That might be a good opportunity to see both of these teams. And I think that's what people want in Western New York. It's not necessarily, it was great when UB was top 25 and going to the NCAA tournament and winning NCAA tournament games. But I think what people really want is good, solid local college basketball from any of these teams. And when the teams are losing and when the buildings aren't full and when it's a boring game to attend, that's when the fans lose interest in overall product and overall interest in the sport, I think.
If you're a college basketball fan in Western New York and obviously you don't have a press pass, you can't just come and go. You have to pick one of these games. Which game would you pick as a fan, Jonah? The Vermont at UB game or Fairmont State versus Damon in a battle of top 5 nationally ranked teams?
Well, I think this factors in a little bit to my decision. I would probably pick Damon in a vacuum because, uh, Damon plays a lot of home games. So they play a lot of home games against teams that they beat by 20, 30 points, and they don't play that many home games against other ranked quality opponents. So getting to see really competitive Division II basketball with a team as good as Damon is a rare opportunity. Also, if you've never been to Damon, you were there for the NCAA tournament, Division II, and the conference championship games they hosted. It's a cool environment. It's because the gym is smaller, because they can only fit about 400 to 500 people in there. It feels like a packed high school gym. There's a lot of energy. You're on top of the court. You're really close. You can hear the players. You can hear the coaches. You can tell that Coach Mike McDonald knows just about everybody in the gym and can recognize them all by their face from his standing on the sidelines. And if you've never experienced that before, I'd recommend going and checking that out at Damon, and especially a game like this against another really good opponent and should be an excellent game. Damon will be a harder ticket to get because of it being a smaller gym. It might sell out at some point today and be harder for a walk-up customer to go get into the gym, which at UB, I don't think they're pushing anywhere close to a sellout. And it would probably be pretty easy to walk up and get a good seat for that one. So I think it depends. They are in the same kind of neighborhood. I think that affects people a lot. And St. Bonaventure is playing really well. And if you're down in the South Towns or you like making that trip down to the South Towns before the weather turns, they have some home games coming up. And a lot of these teams are on the road through Thanksgiving weekend with some. Bona's got a big game against North Carolina next week. I think the day after Thanksgiving or the day before. But home games coming up and opportunities to see Bona at UB.
North Carolina at the Riley Center?
No. It's in Fort Myers. Both Buffalo and St. Bonaventure are going down to Fort Myers, Florida for a tournament next week, but they're not in the same tournament. Well, they're in the same event, but different brackets and different tournaments, different teams. So
check your zipper there, Joan. I think your cord is kind of you got a little like
Check
percussion.
check your
You got
zipper.
some accompanying music with your as you speak.
I might have to report to TGAF HR after that.
It's creating a nice chime effect, but um, let's jump into the Bills. Um, Big win, Josh Allen, 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns to become the first player in NFL history to do so twice in the same game within a career. Otto Graham, the only other one to do it, and it was in the 1954 NFL championship game. We were talking a couple of weeks ago. I even asked Sean McDermott about it after the game. He passed Earl Campbell on the rushing touchdowns list. I mean, this guy, we're talking about Otto Graham, Earl Campbell. Every week there's a name. He had something. There was a stat, and I might be getting it wrong. So it was something like at least 6 touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns in each of his first 8 seasons, matching Jim Brown, LaDainian Tomlinson, Marshall Faulk, I think. I mean, it's like these names are Hall of Famers, and as long as touchdowns are worth 6 points, I don't care how you're scoring these touchdowns. It's not like, well, the game has changed. Quarterbacks didn't do it back then, or what, all kinds of those. So what? I mean, he's scoring touchdowns like running backs score touchdowns.
Well, no, I would say some of the touchdowns, and maybe even the majority of the touchdowns, are really impressive football plays that I would give
Yeah.
Josh Allen a lot of credit for. But some of these tush push, he kind of walks in over the lineman touchdowns that he's
Didn't
been
Jim Brown
scoring
score
lately.
those touchdowns? Didn't Earl Campbell score those touchdowns? Didn't John Riggins score those
Well, I wasn't
touchdowns?
around to see all of them, but I feel like they were more contested. The defense had a greater ability to stop those running backs, and it was a more physical uh, play. It was a bigger highlight. I don't know. I mean, I think even compared to earlier touchdowns in Josh Allen's career, I'm not so sure he's getting more rushing touchdowns this season and last season than he used to early in his career. I don't think he's better at scoring rushing touchdowns than he used to be. It's the evolution of the rules and these tush push type plays that I think are boosting those stats a little bit. Not to take anything away, because I think, we're saying he scored 6 touchdowns, and I think 5 of them were A+ plays, and one of them wasn't as good as the others. But as far as having more rushing touchdowns than Earl Campbell, I don't know if he's necessarily a better goal line back than Earl Campbell.
We could probably argue that he's better because he has the ability to throw the ball. He's a dangerous weapon.
I'm not sure
Um,
he's a better goal line back than Rob Riddick.
maybe not. But here's a stat: more touchdowns before turning 30 than Peyton Manning. And it should be noted that Peyton Manning didn't win his Super Bowl until he was 31. So, of course, there were a lot of conversations about who was wasting Peyton Manning's career, this greatness, not being able to get past Tom Brady before he finally broke through. And in similar fashion, as we were talking with Sean Merriman last week on this podcast, Josh Allen, the greatest quarterback to not fill in the blank, whether it be reach a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. Sean McDermott, the greatest coach since Marty Schottenheimer to not get to the Super Bowl. All these types of things. They needed damn near every bit of Josh Allen's 6 touchdowns to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, that's something that gets eclipsed by the fun that game was. 44 points. As Todd Bowles, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coach, said after the game, you score 32, you're supposed to win. The Bills can't live giving up 32 points. They still have trouble stopping the run. And these are the problems that have manifest weeks ago, maybe even before the season even began. You knew this was going to be a problem. The Bills have not corrected it. Bobby Babich had the comment yesterday where he said, enough is enough. I don't know what that means because I'm sure he's probably tried to put his foot down, as has Sean McDermott, regarding the run defense months ago. And so to say enough is a great quote. But let's see what happens. Houston Texans offensively, not a big threat. Where the Bills, I think, are vulnerable is when they have the ball, because Houston's defense is really good and their defensive ends each have, I think they've combined for 17, 18 sacks already this year. I guess I don't want to get too far down the line to talk about the Houston Texans game, because let's go back to Sunday. Let's actually go back to Friday. Keon Coleman's late for a meeting, and I'm surprised, quite frankly, I wrote a column in which I took the flamethrower to Keon Coleman, and he can wear that Macy's Gore-Tex yellow jacket maybe to protect him from the flamethrower. I don't know. But the adorable Keon Coleman is long in the rearview mirror. Mr. Wegman's cookies and the Macy's jacket and the Hurdle Avenue mural in which they just put the yellow parka over Stephon Diggs, which they could do because of the visor. And it's just like, well, see you later, Stephon Diggs. We have Keon Coleman now. Ha ha, isn't he a blast? Well, here it is, a year and a half later, and Stephon Diggs is helping to propel the New England Patriots to first place in the AFC East. And Keon Coleman is a healthy scratch because he has now shown up for at least 3 meetings late that we know of. I'm surprised at the pushback I got for being mean to Keon. And maybe the fans, or at least a certain segment of the fans, are soft because for as much as Bills fans love to talk about blue collar mentality, defend our dirt, all this alpha male, like rah, rah, like get in there, get after them, real men, culture, attitude, all these things. But as soon as you push back on one of the players that they think or that they might own a jersey of, or they maybe invested a little bit too much of their passions into and their hopes and dreams, I'm just surprised at the number of people who were like, man, leave this guy alone. Maybe he's got a problem we don't know about. Maybe he's dealing with things. Well, to which I would say the Bills know what he's dealing with. They would know his medical history. I had a lot of armchair doctors telling me that it's anything from narcolepsy to ADHD, or maybe he's a medication he's on, or all kinds of medical excuses. But how about Occam's razor, which is the answer is probably the simplest, or the solution is probably the simplest answer. And it's the fact that this guy can't show up on time 3 times now, at least that we know of. And the Bills benched him. The Bills know his history, and the Bills benched him. I think that the fans should maybe at least trust that the Bills organization is doing what's best for the organization, number one, and for Keon Coleman by trying to teach him this lesson. And Deion Dawkins, the biggest kid in the NFL, probably the guy who straps his 5-year-old into the passenger seat of a drifting car, on Hard Knocks, and makes these and he's got all these ticks and twitches and things that he embraces, and in the commercials and everything else. Deion, the biggest kid in the world, says, Deion Dawkins says, Keon Coleman, time to grow up. That's a statement especially when it's coming from Deion Dawkins. So I don't know. The floor is yours, Jonah.
Well, I think that the story that developed about Keon Coleman and being late for the meeting, being benched for disciplinary reasons, I was somewhat impressed with Deion. I also liked what Deion Dawkins said. I was somewhat impressed with Keon Coleman stopping in the tunnel, speaking to the media, the accountability he took in his statements, the tone of his voice. He didn't seem angry with the media for wanting to talk to him. Most players that don't play do not talk. I think many players, you probably can maybe remember examples of guys doing this, but a second-year player in this type of situation, I think the odds of him stopping to talk we thought were pretty low. And even walking by the media in a way that he could have been spotted. Usually these guys sneak out very early.
It's hard to
hop
sneak
into the
out from that
elevator.
locker room, though.
Yeah, I guess it is, but he could have went down to the field and hid from us that way. He could have hooked into the elevator more quickly than in the way he walked up. And I wasn't there. I was in the opposing locker room.
Yeah, he didn't put up any
with the
kind
Buccaneers.
of, he walked out, and it was kind of like, if somebody stops me, I'll stop. And reporters did. And he didn't pout about it. He wasn't like, oh man, get off, you guys stop bugging me or get out of my face. And he was kind of like he was expecting it. I think he was hoping to skirt past without being stopped. But once he was stopped, he was like, yeah, understandable. He was short. He was not insightful. But he didn't dodge us, and he answered all our questions that we had. And if we'd have come up with more creative ways to ask some questions, he probably would have answered those too. So I will say, though, that I think that some people gave him a little too much credit for that. Like, hey, it was a stand-up thing to do, but I don't think it overcomes or surmounts the unprofessionalism of showing up late to work. I mean, being nice to the media in that moment, He shortchanged his teammates and his organization and his employer and the people who are paying him millions of dollars by repeatedly showing up late for work. So just being a stand-up guy to the media, I guess I'll give him some credit, but it doesn't rectify the fact or say, well, this is a good employee or a fine fine character.
Yes. What I wondered though is this story about, well, what happened with him missing the meeting and being benched from the game and inactive for missing the meeting obscured the fact that he had been sliding down in the depth chart in the offense before that for on-field reasons. And in fact, I think there was an initial story out on one of the wires that Keon Coleman benched for on-field struggles. It was before it sort of learned that it was about a uh, missed meeting, and there was belief on Saturday when they elevated Gabe Davis that he might be healthy scratched for football reasons.
If you'll let me give the quick rundown. So Cover One had the scoop on Friday that Keon Coleman was not going to dress, that he was going to be a healthy scratch. We didn't know why, but Cover One had the scoop, and kudos to Cover One for having that. When Cover One has something, they have broken some news in the past. They do a great job. They are sourced, and they are responsible. So I was quick to retweet that. I don't retweet a lot of independent stuff because I don't know the veracity of it, but Cover One I did. And then we learned on Sunday, as we in the more mainstream media tried to get that confirmed, we had trouble with it. It wasn't until Sunday that Jordan Schultz tweeted out that Keon Coleman wasn't going to play, but it was clearly from the agent because it was laden with, he had a great week of practice. This is not performance related. This was, and it was kind of, half truths, because I think that showing up late to a meeting on Friday does not mean you had a great week. Maybe at practice or on the field, I guess, technically, if you want to say it, but he had a bad week as far as I'm concerned of preparation for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when you're showing up late for the multiple and umpteenth time. And then Ian Rappaport from NFL Network reported that he was late to a meeting. Then Adam Schefter at ESPN reported that he missed the meeting. And I think that there's a big difference there, obviously, to which I asked Keon Coleman to clarify that after the game. And he did. He was like, late, missed it. What difference does it make? It was a screw up, but I was late. And so there were those three things. So yeah, it was all, but you're right. There was legitimacy to this guy could be benched just because he's not been good enough. That was a legitimate reason before we got the explanation. And I think Sean McDermott even did say that he would have played had not for, is that right?
I wasn't there.
I missed
that,
about the first minute
on, yeah.
But anyways, I think it's come out that Keon Coleman was going to play, that this was a sudden change of personnel as of Friday because of what Keon did.
And maybe that's important because for me, I'm not so concerned about being late for the meetings. Yes, it's been repetitive. He's got to clean that up. The Bills are ratcheting up the enforcement of that. If he's late to another meeting, he's probably going to get benched again and maybe benched more permanently if he can't correct that behavior. But if he's just a young person struggling with time management or alarm clocks or things like that every once in a while, I don't think that's a major cause for Bills fans to be concerned. But the totality of struggling on the field, there were questions about his effort late in the Miami game, accepting his role, developing into the player that they need him to be for his draft position, all the other receivers drafted around him and how they're progressing, along with being a bit immature, being late for meetings, his body language sometimes, even in practice, doesn't look great. So all of that,
I think Thad Brown's video from before the game, Thad Brown from Rochester.
I kind of liked it. Yes, it did. It was good dance. He looked like he was enjoying himself.
You're right. And a lot of people dissected that, including, by the way, two other guys who haven't exactly been known for their sophisticated maturity level. Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson on a podcast just yesterday really ripped into Keon Coleman, and they used that pregame video of him dancing and fooling around before the game as, is this a guy who's taking it seriously? I did see some fans also push back on that, saying, hey, this guy, stay loose, man, keep with it. But Shannon Sharp and Chad Johnson two guys who are all known for antics during their playing days and after, by the way. Shannon Sharpe, you can question his maturity level and being able to remain employed in recent months. But these are two guys that love to goof around, and they thought that Keon Coleman was over the top in not being serious enough. And the fact that you've just been scratched from a game, you should be upset. You should be, you shouldn't be so happy just to be out there with your boys on the sideline before the game, dancing to DJ Milk's offerings over the PA system.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, but what is his role on game day as an inactive player? Is it to bring energy to the bench, to be that type of supportive player for his team? I think as an injured player, if you saw him doing that, you'd be like, wow, Keon Coleman's really engaged in this game, even though he's not playing. So I don't know. I do think it's a tough juxtaposition, and I saw some people actually do that. Put that video next to a picture of, Keon Coleman on the sidelines looking desolate, and kind of point out the contrast in personality. I think that's something about Keon Coleman. I think it's likable in a lot of ways, but he has a distinct, peculiar personality, and he expresses himself in ways that are different than really any other player that's ever played for the Bills, and maybe any other player in the NFL. And sometimes
reminds me of Marcel Darius without the production.
Yeah, but I don't think it's like Marcel Darius, because Keon Coleman is so unique. But I think being that unique, his intentions and expressions can be misinterpreted, and they can be ambiguous. It can be interpreted in different ways, and maybe even that be intentional or not wrong. So I think the fact that he doesn't behave normally in a lot of contexts leads to some of these emotive behaviors that are open to interpretation and might not be a bad thing, but somebody could spin it into a bad thing if they wanted to.
I think you have to look harder to find the positive in the way he behaves than it is the negative, especially when you look back on, the guy who was like, the dog who sees a squirrel in the backyard when he was at his introductory news conference. He's like, wow, you guys have cookies in here? Wow. And be like,
but wasn't that a sign?
It was charming at the time. It was charming at the time, but also maybe it's like, maybe the elevator, as I think I said, on Bill's Kickoff Live, I think maybe the elevator doesn't go to the top floor. And I'm not saying that the guy's not bright. I'm just saying that some guys are just a little quirky enough that, and I think that's what you're saying too, Jonah, is you're quirky enough that you don't fit, square peg in a round hole, and that doesn't make you a bad guy. But the NFL, and there was, I wish I could quote the tweet because it was great. I retweeted it. Somebody responded to my column. The NFL doesn't stop for you. Like, the NFL is not, Sean McDermott doesn't have time to figure out Keon Coleman's quirky behavior and try to work through this. Like, they have a game, and they have 2 games in a span of 5 days that they need to get ready for. They don't have time for this bullshit. The NFL won't stop. The NFL didn't stop when Damar Hamlin almost dropped dead on the field. They played those games the next week. They made the Bills play the Patriots the next week. There was no off game. Sorry, guys, we know you just may have seen your teammate die, and here it is Wednesday, and you still don't know if he's going to make it, but you got to play the Patriots on Sunday afternoon at 1:00. I'm sorry, sometimes you get left behind. If you can't keep up, you're going to get left behind. They're going to find somebody who can keep up, regardless of your intentions or whether you're a nice guy or just, if you don't, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, he was the youngest wide receiver in his draft class and one of the youngest players drafted in the early rounds. And with switching sports and switching colleges, everybody switches colleges now, but he did seem to have a delayed football development from his career in college football and came in as an immature football player. And maybe we were seeing just that youth and immaturity in good ways and bad ways with some of his press conference interactions and now being late for meetings. I mean, that's something that young players do. Have you ever heard of an older player, a veteran player, missing a meeting or being late or getting disciplined?
Marcel Darius.
Well, okay, yeah. Okay. But it's usually younger players, and it's usually something that happens, and then they correct it, and it never happens again. The Bills seemed concerned that they thought they corrected it with Keon Coleman, and it happened again. I don't know. This is speculation, but I do wonder if there's connections between the weeks when he's less involved in the game plan, less involved in the offense. Does that cause his commitment to showing up on meetings on
Well,
a
the first time
Friday
it
to
happened,
be.
Jonah, was right before his third NFL game. He was a rookie. I don't care how much you're in the game plan. You're a rookie getting ready for your third NFL game. I'd have to look. Maybe that was, maybe might have been his first home game. Let me go back and take a real quick look. I'm sorry. Last year it was Jacksonville. The second home game. They played Arizona in the opener. Then they went to Miami, and then he was benched for the first quarter against the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 3. So, and heading into the game where he was benched for the first series against the Patriots, he went into that game as Josh Allen's leading target through the first 4 weeks of the season. I mean, this is a guy who was involved.
Do you think if he was
Had a
playing
huge
great,
game against the Ravens.
yeah, do you think if he was playing great, if he was establishing himself as the Bills' number one receiver, coming off a multiple touchdown game, he did have a touchdown last week and maybe almost had a second one.
Mm-hmm.
Would that have made the Bills hesitate to bench their best receiver, their best offensive player when they're searching for offensive answers?
Yeah, well, that's a point that Shannon Sharp made on that podcast was your skill will dictate how tolerant the team is. But I do think, though, that would not have mattered. Because I think Sean McDermott has to, there are some things coaches have to do. Your hand is forced when these types of things happen. When he walks in late, I don't know if it was a receivers meeting or if it was a team meeting. We don't know all that, what time it was. There maybe some of that stuff will shake out as, the quick turnaround on the week and a, short week of the game. There, it's a little harder to find these things out because the people who know are preoccupied and maybe don't get back to you as quick or whatever. But some of these details will come out. But when you walk into a room late, whether it's your receiver group or the entire offense or the entire team, maybe it's all 60 guys, including the practice squad, your coach has no choice. Like everybody sees that guy showing up late. And it reminds me of the time when Chan Gailey had to remove Stevie Johnson from a game. Remember, they had a series of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, excessive celebration, taunting. There was a bunch of stuff. Stevie Johnson pretended to shoot himself in the leg to make fun of Plaxico Burress. I don't know if you remember these. And he lifted up his shirt. It was against the Patriots, I believe, to a touchdown to take the lead, if I remember correctly. It was a good game. The Bills were in it against the Tom Brady Patriots. And he lifts up his shirt and had a message under there again and got a flag. And so Chan Gailey, his best receiver, just did it. And after Chan Gailey said to the entire team, next guy to do it, you have to come out of the game. Well, and it was a story. Chan Gailey had to explain. He said, I had to do it. I can't go to the team and say, these are the repercussions. And then you flaunt it and I have to do it. So I think that if Keon Coleman's coming off a 3 touchdown performance or a 3 catch performance, Sean McDermott's doing what he did. And I think that if not for injury, we might be looking at Keon Coleman missing the game against Houston on Thursday night too, because the Bills just scored 44 points without him. And Sean McDermott is going to probably make him work a little harder to get his trust. McDermott said it yesterday. It's about earning trust back. It's about moving forward, doing the right thing. And McDermott seemed to say that it could go either way. It wasn't as though on Monday, McDermott was like, and he's held, he didn't say, and he's responded in the way he was like, hey, we're still figuring this out. Let's see what he does. So, and I don't know that McDermott knows about the video before the game of how Keon was behaving. Maybe he does, but I'm sure he wouldn't love it. Anyway, I do think that the McCole Hardman's got the calf injury. Curtis Samuel has a elbow and neck injury, I think it is. So there are receivers banged up. It'll be fascinating, I think, if with those injuries, if Keon Coleman still doesn't play. I mean, that is a hardcore, hard line stance by the coaching staff, by the organization that Keon, you're on thin ice. Maybe we see Steven Gosnell elevated for that role, or Terrell Shavers getting more offensive snaps. He did get a season high 54% of the offensive snaps on Sunday after getting only 20% of the snaps through that New England Patriots game aforementioned. So
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned Dalton Kincaid, and he's a tight end, but he's also a primary receiver for the Bills.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
not having Dalton Kincaid and not having Keon Coleman takes a lot away from the offense the Bills were implementing in the preseason. Now, they didn't have either of those guys on Sunday. Josh Allen threw for 316 yards and scored 75 touchdowns or whatever it was. I thought that was interesting that with less personnel on the field, it did add Gabe Davis into the mix, but with less receiving talent than the Bills had at the beginning of the season or in some of these games when they've really struggled, they threw the ball well, they moved the ball well, they got the ball deep. Josh Allen didn't seem to be searching for open receivers nearly as much as he had been in previous games.
Took deep shots despite the wind. I mean, people were saying, "Well, there goes the long ball today." Those flags at the top of the stadium were whipping. And very early in the game, Josh Allen's like, "Let's see what you got, McCole Hardman." And that obviously is something that Houston Texans are going to have to. I mean, Hardman may not play, but if you're going to go deep with the flags whipping like that, you're going to maybe try to go deep in the dome.
Yeah, and there was a strong belief in and around the trade deadline and some of the games the Bills have struggled in the past month that the Bills lacked top-end receiver talent, and that was holding back the offense, and that was holding back Josh Allen and wasting Josh Allen's prime and preventing Josh Allen from being an MVP quarterback and ruining the Bills' Super Bowl season. And yes, the Bills have the Bills can get better at wide receiver, or the Bills can get better play out of the wide receiver, and they probably don't have an elite top end number one wide receiver. But they have a tight end they drafted in the first round, a receiver that they drafted near the first round, and good depth of receivers and players who can play a bit. Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, when he's healthy, have shown they can be solid receivers. I don't think the Bills are lacking in wide receiver all around, but there is something lacking in the passing game. But there's a multitude of issues, I think, in play calling and Josh Allen's recognition at the line and Josh Allen's execution on simple passing plays, not the great hero plays that he makes, that were all better against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But there's a lot. The answer to the Bills' problems in the passing game are a lot more than just needed to trade for a number one wide receiver. And without their number one wide receiver and without their number one tight end target, they still found ways to have an effective passing game. And I think they can continue to do that with the talent they have. And the lack of a number one wide receiver is not really an excuse. And it's something the Bills can overcome, especially with their run-oriented offense, and still be one of the best teams in football, even though they didn't trade for a wide receiver at the trade deadline.
Elijah Moore, also a healthy scratch for Sunday's game against Tampa Bay. So he's a guy who could get elevated instead of Keon Coleman with some of these injuries. Elijah Moore, by the way, 34th overall pick in the 2021 draft. So a lot of people are like, Keon Coleman's got to work. He's a high draft pick, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Elijah Moore, 34th overall pick, who is now on his third team in 2 years and is a healthy scratch, does not work out. Keon Coleman, 33rd overall pick last year. So maybe Keon Coleman and Elijah Moore looking down the barrel of the same type of career as it looks right now, unless Keon Coleman ventures with this crossroads down the right path. And you see it too. I mean, there were all kinds of comments made by Josh Allen, by Sean McDermott, and I'm not saying that they were talking about Keon Coleman directly, but there were so many things said after the game. Sean McDermott about the deep ball. The ball will find guys who work hard, was the quote. And I'm paraphrasing just a little bit, but I think that's pretty close to the quote regarding Terrell Shavers on that long, deep touchdown pass from Josh Allen. McDermott talking about Cole Bishop, who was drafted in the same round in the same draft class as Keon Coleman. Cole Bishop, first guy, one of the first guys in the building, one of the last ones to leave. And he's saying that 2 days after Keon Coleman showed up late to a meeting. Guys working hard, guys blocking downfield. I'm not saying, again, those weren't direct comments towards or throwing shade at Keon Coleman, but you can extrapolate all kinds of comments about the guys who are doing it the right way, especially in the context of a guy who just got benched because he can't figure out how to do it the right way. Let's talk about the Sabres, Jonah. 2 big wins, a thrilling come-from-behind win at Detroit to get their first road win of the season, and then following it up they seem to do well against Edmonton. But Edmonton was a heavy favorite last night heading into KeyBank Center, and the Sabres win 5-1, I think the final was. What's the energy around this team? I know you've been around them a lot more than I have.
Yeah, two great wins for the emotional health of the team and the locker room and the fan base. Even though the Sabres are in last place, struggling on the road and have a below 500 record, they have a good home record. They're doing a good job, I think, in the fan service of more often than not giving the fans something to cheer about at home. Their previous home game before that was maybe the worst loss of the season, shutout against the Blues. That notwithstanding, they still have a lot of injuries at forward. But Josh Norris skated yesterday. He's ahead of schedule to come back from an injury. They had an initial timeline of about 8 weeks. He might be coming back in the sixth or seventh week of that timeline. Jason Zucker's back on the ice and close to recovering from his illness. Yuri Kulik is not back on the ice, and we don't really know his timeline for coming back. But the Sabres getting healthier. But with these forwards out of the lineup, they called up Noah Ostlund and Isak Rosén. Ostlund specifically had 2 goals last night and played very, very well. Skating on the fourth line with Beck Malenstein, who had another one of the goals, and the way the Sabres were able to wait. Lindy Ruff was able to shuffle his lines, put the right lines and defensive pairs out there against McDavid and Draisaitl, limit them. I mean, I think if you were at that game and you're a Sabres fan, you might always remember the game you were at where the Sabres shut down Connor McDavid and 2 rookies, the rookie goaltender and the rookie fourth line center, outshined 2 of the biggest stars in the league. That's kind of a canon event for Sabres history, especially within this Sabres with playoff drought when they're not doing much better than that. But I think the combination of getting a little bit healthier, Darlene coming back to the team at the end of that road trip, getting a couple wins, they're still far out of the, well, not far out of the playoff picture. They're only about 6 points out, but they're behind every other team. The playoff odds have them, I think, only about 5% chance. So it's not looking great for the end of the season culminating and where everybody wants it to go. But where we are right now, going into Thanksgiving, the Sabres are playing better, winning a little more, getting healthier, getting some encouraging performances from young players and young prospects. Lindy Ruff seems happy with the way they're playing and responding to his coaching. The team seems to be cohesive, and even though they're losing, they're not blaming each other, or there doesn't seem to be conflicts with the coaching and the locker room at any point. So the Sabres are, for a last place team, seem to be in a pretty good place right now. But 1 or 2 losses changes everything, and there's a lot of people in and outside of the Sabres fans throughout the league that are just circling around the Sabres waiting for them to make a management change, and any loss, any losing streak, any winless streak just magnifies that, and the Sabres have to keep winning and make the playoffs to prevent those conversations from cropping up again anytime now.
Calgary Flames in town to continue this 4-game homestand and starting it off great, as you mentioned, against Edmonton last night. Calgary at the KeyBank Center on Wednesday, and then they get the Tri-C's for every other night. Calgary, Chicago, Carolina every other night for the rest of this homestand.
Yeah. And after this homestand, they go on their longest road trip of the season, and the early season home games, home bias schedule that they had goes away now. These are the kind of the extra home games that they have right here, right now. And after that, they're going to play a few more on the road than they do at home. So a very important homestand. And then they got that 1 road win. They got to make sure that they don't go winless on the road, because the season could end on that road trip if they don't, play more consistently in those games.
Yeah, after they have Carolina on what is that? The 23rd is Sunday.
Sunday, yeah.
So they have Carolina on Sunday. Then they have 8 of their next 10 on the road. They go back and forth at Pittsburgh, home against New Jersey, at Minnesota, home against Winnipeg, and then 6 straight on the road: Philly, Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Seattle. That's a grind. And then just a couple more games. Man, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wait. 14 of their next 20 are on the road after this 4-game homestand. Man, that's tough. Joan, anything else you want to get to before we wrap up?
I just UB football still has an opportunity to win the MAC championship if they win out their last two games and need one of these wins to gain bowl eligibility. Home in both of these games, midweek action on Wednesday night, and then at home on Black Friday. That'll be at
Yeah,
the
let's
same
state
time
that
as the
again
Sabres game.
because I screwed it up. UB hosts Miami of Ohio Wednesday night at 7:00.
Yeah. And, talking about schedules, it's not every season that UB or a MAC team or a mid-major football team is playing relevant games in November in the last couple weeks of the season. And oftentimes UB has played these games and they're not at home. They're either out of it or they're on the road, or sometimes they've got, the bowl eligibility locked up, but they're not in the MAC championship game, so the last game doesn't matter. So the opportunity to see UB play in meaningful games at home at the end of the season doesn't happen every year, and it is happening this year because they do have the schedule makers did them some favors with putting these home games at the end, and also their non-conference schedule had an additional home game. And they're against Miami and Ohio, are two teams that are also in that MAC race. So they're good MAC games for, the overall watching and betting and paying attention to MACtion the way it is this time of year. I don't know if they'll get a great crowd, but I think there's some reasons for maybe a few more people to come out to these games than normally would. There is a Sabres game going on at the same time of both of these games, but I don't know. Not that many people go to Sabres games these days.
Did you
In
know
high
that
school football, after playing those championship games at the stadium, the regional games are at All High Stadium this week. So if you're interested in checking out City of Buffalo teams, Bennett, McKinley, Newfane in Class D, Chautauqua Lake, and Lackawanna, they're playing state playoff games against Rochester area teams at All High Stadium Friday night, Saturday. Canisius versus St. Francis, probably the two best high school football teams in Western New York. They play a championship game at Buff State at noon Saturday. So a lot of football going on this weekend after the Bills play. After the Bills play, after UB play, then more high school state playoff games.
Did you know that UB's opponent, Miami of Ohio, tomorrow night at UB Stadium? Did you know that Miami is the same Miami as the one in Florida? The same Native American tribe. They migrated. Same crew.
I didn't know that, but I'm not, that sounds correct. That sounds
Absolutely
like probably how they got the name.
Yeah. Same dudes.
And they are the Red Hawks, correct? Or did they change that?
Yeah, I think. I don't know what they changed it to, but yeah, they changed it.
I'm not sure if they changed it.
The red something. It was one of the racist ones.
It's still Red Hawks though, so either
Red Hawks. Yeah,
they're
that's
still racist or that.
no. I
not
think they were the
racist?
red. I think they were the red men before.
Oh, okay. All right. I got you.
Quite racist. Okay, Jonah. Thank you for this. And thanks to everybody out there for watching and listening to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and business consultants.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.